And on to our main story, the Department of Education has barred former SABC COO Hlaudi from addressing learners at Eqinisweni Secondary School in Ivory Park in Tembisa. The Provincial Department of Education says the community member who invited Motsoeneng did not follow proper channels to get permission for the motivational talk at the school. However, it is common cause for schools to invite speakers without requesting the department's permission. Meanwhile, the DA says Motsoeneng should be banned from speaking at schools. The department's refusal raises questions about Motsoeneng being possibly sidelined for his political views. And this is what DA MP Gavin Davis says about banning Motsoeneng from schools. He says one wonders what study tips Motsoeneng can offer when he himself failed to obtain a matric. Davis says Motsoeneng has not hidden his disdain for schooling, claiming that too much education is dangerous. Section 33A of the South African Schools Act is clear that political activities during school time are prohibited. And the key questions on Hlaudi Motsoeneng's rejection are, firstly, are all people invited to speak at schools vetted by the Department of Education? Secondly, has Hlaudi Motsoeneng been selectively targeted for his unconventional political views? And how does not having a matric qualification disbar Hlaudi from addressing students? And is it fair to suggest that formal education is the epitome of learning while experience has no value at all? And joining us live in studio is Steve Mabona, Gauteng Education spokesperson. Gavin Davis is the Shadow Minister of Communications for the Democratic Alliance, and Vuyo Sibia, chairperson of the Kuzodlula Motivational Talk. Good evening to you, and thanks so much for joining us. Shadow Minister Davis, maybe you can just explain in terms of the vetting process and the autonomy that a school has in inviting speakers, where in this case you took objection.
Well, we don't think that schools should all be expected to go through the department every single time they invite a speaker to an assembly or to the school. We think that would be overly bureaucratic, and we think it would impinge on the rights of the schools to set their own syllabus and to ensure that there are speakers who can come and inspire the learners. But I do think that if the department hears about a political event taking place at a school, it does have a right to intervene, because the South African Schools Act is very clear that political activities should not happen during school time. And I would like to commend the Gauteng department for taking action and ensuring that this political event did not take place today.
All right, and I can understand maybe based on previous press statements from Mr. Hlaudi Motsoeneng that you would be apprehensive in, allowing this to happen. But according to the event organizers, this was mainly to inspire, motivate learners and share his experiential knowledge about the industry. So I'm not sure about the politics that you're referring to.
Well, we all know that Mr. Motsoeneng is on a political crusade since he was suspended from the SABC. The ANC Youth League are trying to get him into Parliament, and he himself has said that he will take any leadership position in government. So we do think that it's a political campaign, and if he was just there to offer study advice and to motivate the learners, then I think we need to ask the question, why did he invite the media if it was just for him to go there and talk to the learners? I think the fact that he invited the media there, and if you look at his public pronouncements over the last couple of weeks, it was pretty clear that this was part of his political campaign.
Please stay on the line, Mr. Davis. We have Steve Mabona, Gauteng Education spokesperson. What do you make out of all of this, and where there could be a concern of potential overreach from politics or politicians in meddling in school affairs?
No, well, for us it's quite clear. Anyone who visit our schools, they need permission to do that. We decline a lot of people because we have a discretion. We check on what are you bringing at the school and what time do you want to come at school. So we consider quite a number of things. I mean, we have production houses who normally also, give, some requests, and some of them we assess and check whether there won't be any school disruption, because there must not be any school disruption at all our schools. So we make sure that we don't have that. So anything which suggests that there will be school disruption, most of the times we decline such a request. So in this case, there was no request for any permission for that activity. Yeah.
Okay, but if the process was followed and there was adequate oversight, could this request have been permitted?
Look, any case, it's look at its own merits. So a request will be looked at, we assess, we check before we give any approval. So I would not be in a position to say we were going to agree or not agree to that. But then what I'm saying, we will encourage people to, the process must be followed, and then we'll grant permission if there won't be any disruption of school, because we are against any disruption of school. And even us, when we go to schools, we try to minimize any disruption. If there's a project that we are launching, we focus on a specific learners that we are going there, and briefly, without any interruption, the school must then continue. It's only on a case where probably there's a bereavement, like yesterday we had a sad moment at Clapham where one educator passed away. The principal there, in consultation with the SGP, they did not have any choice but to cancel any schooling, but then they will have to catch up. But any other day we will not grant anything without any permission.
So it's not necessarily a policy against Motsoeneng per se, it's really more about propriety and ensuring that the processes are followed.
Definitely, we're not looking at individuals here, we're looking at the process, and we're looking at what is paramount. Is the school going to be disturbed, and which we are against?
All right, we'll get a response from Mr. Davis. First, we go to the lines. Tulani in Polokwane and Esther in Pretoria, we see you. Good evening to you, Tulani. Thanks for joining us.
Good evening, and good evening to the listeners. People like Motsoeneng, you cannot give anything to our kids. In fact, yourself, you are not qualified, you are not educated. Whatever he's saying on a daily basis, he says people of South Africa, they like him and all those things. He's just giving a self-praise. No one likes his ideas. And he cannot go to school and then try to impart such things to our kids. What type of a country are we? Who is leading us? We're led by fools.
All right, Tulani.
The DA, he mustn't address the school children.
Thanks so much for your call. Esther in Pretoria, good evening to you.
Good evening, Cindy. I'm so happy that I speak to you all, and good evening to the listeners. I just want to highlight one thing. Everything that ANC does, DA is against it, and that gives us a worry. What are we doing to ourselves as black people? I want to highlight to the listeners, my daughter, she's doing MBA with UNISA at the Midrand campus, and Motsoeneng is at the same class. You know, when you are over 23, you qualify. So what are people talking about? They used to discourage talking about Malema, that he failed his woodwork. Today, Malema has got his BA degree. They are not saying anything about it anymore. They are quiet. I just want to let your listeners know that Motsoeneng is busy with his MBA. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much, Esther. Mr. Davies, just on the two callers, one saying they concur that Motsoeneng doesn't have much to impart, albeit experiential knowledge, and Ma'am Esther clarifying that indeed he is pursuing higher learning education.
Well, I would like to agree with Tulani, but I would also like to say that the big problem with Hlaudi Motsoeneng is that, and his suitability as a role model for children isn't so much that he himself doesn't have a matric. It's that he lied about having a matric when he applied for his job at the SABC. It's that he was found guilty of fraud when he artificially inflated his own salary at the SABC, and that he was found guilty of purging and intimidating staff. Those are the major problems that we have with Hlaudi Motsoeneng. The fact that he doesn't have a matric is one thing, but it's much more of a problem that he has behaved in the way that he does. So we don't think he's a good role model for children. Esther's point that everything the ANC does, the DA is against, well, I don't think that's true. You know, the ANC government in Gauteng was against the visit of Hlaudi Motsoeneng to this school. And it was the ANC government that stepped in and took action, and we commend them for that. So we're not against the ANC in this regard. We're actually supporting the action of an ANC government in Gauteng.
All right, we take more calls, Mr. Davies and Mr. Mabona. Please stay with us. Vanessa NPE, thanks so much for joining us. Good evening to you.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for taking my call. I'd just like to make a point of this whole matric thing. My mom had a standard 6 only, and she went on to succeed as one of the top estate agents in Port Elizabeth. So it's not only about education. The difference between Hlaudi and my mom is that she never lied about her education. You know, she said she had a standard 6 and she worked hard, and I know Hlaudi must have worked hard. But you can't go through life lying to people. And God hears you, you know. He's got to stand up one day and answer to God, and that's a frightening thing for Hlaudi. What he should do is actually just be honest, and he'll get far more out of life.
All right, Vanessa, voice of reason there. Zenzo in Joburg, good evening to you.
Good evening, and good evening to all listeners. Yeah, I'm getting so worried about the way they talk about Hlaudi. And it is mostly the white community, because they believe only what has got to be imparted to our children is to think the way that their education was structured. For Hlaudi to speak at a school and motivate kids, he is not only addressing those who are going to attain matric, but there are kids who are going to fail, but they can be motivated by this man to say, even without matric, you can still be someone. You can still lead an organization, which is what Hlaudi did. He is actually an example of excellence without education. I assure you that as I sit here, I have not attained any university degree, but I can challenge a lot of economists that I hear who speak every day on television, who speak colonial economics, which is not real for South Africa. So education does not necessarily speak to the brains of a person. Can South Africans move away from the white mentality that we should be programmed to think in their own way?
Zenzo, we'll get a response from our panelists. Thanks so much for calling in that we need to be careful. Not everybody has got the academic prowess or acumen in completing formal education, Mr. Mabona. We do lament the fact that it's important. Education opens opportunities, etc. But to be careful not to discount the experiential knowledge as well.
No, look, for us, like I said, I mean, we look at all the cases, you know, at its own merits, and we'll then make a call when looking at the application. We need to satisfy ourselves that
did the call come before or after the complaint from the DA?
No, we did. For us, we had to inquire with the district to check on what is really happening, and we found that because we did not have that permission granted from our side, anything that has to do with the public activity at our school, it must be approved by the communication section. So if it's not brought there, then it will not happen in any school.
So, Mr. Davis, would you be satisfied, should the Gauteng Education Department, or any other for that matter, in future engagements decide to grant permission for Mr. Hlaudi to speak, as it's not an outright policy against him, it was more about processes being flouted?
You know, I think the big problem we have is the disruption of school time and the politicization of learners at schools. As long as those two things are not happening, then we will have no problems. But if there's political campaigning happening at schools by Hlaudi Motsoeneng or anybody else, We fundamentally disagree with that.
Yeah, while we're on the subject of disruption or maybe having politically nuanced material, we know of a satirical content that had been used in schools by the admission of the Gauteng Education MEC himself that tends to lean towards the leadership of Jacob Zuma, school exercises being done in that sense. You don't think that is politicizing the school environment in any event?
Well, we need to encourage learners to be critical thinkers and to see both sides of the story and all sides of the story. So it really depends on the context. We can't ban satire from schools because satire is often a very good tool to teach learners about history, for example. But you have to look at all of these things on a case-by-case basis. If the MEC is investigating that, we would like to see the outcome of that investigation.
All right, so we have Tepo on the line. Good evening to you.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, thank you.
And good evening to your listeners and the panelists today. I wanted to quickly state that we have many people that do not have a formal education, who have experience, who are leading companies, both blacks and whites. But now, we have Mr. Hlaudi, who has made the previous pronouncement that too much education is dangerous, and who's been talking to our school children. And mind you, school children are easily influenced. If you can look at our townships, at the villages, and even in the towns, many young people are influenced by what? For example, they envy and celebrate drug laws, tax, and everything. And if you have somebody who has previously pronounced that too much education is dangerous, who's going to speak to the school children, what is he going to tell those children? Is he going to tell them that, no, you must not strive to have enough education? Look at me, you can all leave school and go and lead, but wherever you want to lead without education.
All right. All right, Sepo, thanks so much. Just in wrapping up, Mr. Mabona, and being fair and equitable with the policy of vetting speakers. Again, I want to reiterate that it's not the Gauteng Department's position that Mr. Hlaudi Motsoeneng is not welcome at any of the schools, is not a persona non grata. And what is the voice of parents in this case if they feel that this potentially could benefit their children?
No, look, like I've said, cases, we look at all the cases. And if, because we also have a discretion as a department to say, if whatever is going to be granted, it will be beneficial to school or learners, and without, I need to put an emphasis on disruption. Disruption, it's something that we are against. And looking at the time, and we look at all the aspects, then we grant permission. Like as I'm saying, there's so many that we've declined. There's so many that we have granted. Not even talking about motivational speaking, talking about, film production, wanting to utilize our schools, some wanting to donate. We feel that, no, they will be disrupting. We say, no, let's change the program. Probably let's utilize, a few minutes, during the break time. Target those that we are donating to, then we don't disrupt the school. So we look at all those elements before we allow anything. So without looking at individuals, without looking at personalities, without looking at anything. But the bottom of the matter is any disruption at our school, we say no.
Okay. And of course, Mr. Davis is the Shadow Minister of Communications for the DA. Just a word of encouragement. We did wanted to clarify the overreach of political parties in the school running its curricula, that you're only doing this as a cautionary exercise and not to have people that are unpleasant, if you will, in the schools.